Have you ever wondered if the fall of great empires could offer a glimpse into the future of the United States? Once a global powerhouse, the mighty Ottoman Empire crumbled under the weight of internal decay and external pressures before World War I, but so did the Greek and Roman empires. Could the US be following a similar path today? From political gridlock to economic competition and military overreach, the parallels are striking. Today, we dive deep into the fascinating similarities between the Ottoman Empire's fall and America's current state, revealing the shocking patterns that may hint at the future decay of a modern superpower. Stay tuned as we break down the eerie connections that could change how you see the future of America. Imagine a vast empire, once feared and respected worldwide, slowly crumbling from within. Once the backbone of global trade and power, the Ottoman Empire fell victim to its own inefficiencies. It started with the cracks in its administrative system. What was once a tightly run machine began to fall apart. The bureaucracy? Bloated, corrupt, and out of touch with the people, as well as a slow erosion of the religious laws that made them a force to reckon with. Local rulers, more concerned with their power, further weakened the central government's grip, while the once mighty Ottoman military, riddled with entrenched interests like the Janissaries who left their military might for sedentary roles, creating a shadow of its former self. The empire was bleeding from the inside, and the world was starting to notice, racing to divide the cake as early as the 18th century. Now, think about the United States. Some would argue that it's starting to show similar signs of wear. Political gridlock is paralyzing progress, corruption and lobbying seem to drown out the voices of everyday citizens, extraordinary amounts of regulations hinder innovation as well as the ability to do business, and the influence of foreign meddling has been lately uncovered to the public eye in an unprecedented manner. There's a growing disconnect between the government and its people, leading to mistrust and polarization. And while the US military is still a global force not to mess with, we've seen the limits of its power in long, drawn-out engagements like Vietnam, Afghanistan, Syria, and Iraq, where they destroyed these nations and killed many innocents, yet lost their stated objectives and accomplished nothing but death. Since the start of this millennium, we could argue that although the American military has grown more powerful in terms of equipment and arms, many have lost the will to serve in that establishment. The echoes of the Ottoman military's decline resonate loudly here. Although the Ottomans weren't engaged in mass annihilation to bend the will of its adversary, at some point, people stopped wanting to be involved with the military and chose a more docile life. Both empires, built on strength, at some point, grappling with internal forces that seem to be undermining their very foundations. Is history repeating itself, or are these just superficial similarities? The more you look, the more the parallels between the fall of the Ottomans and the current state of the US come into focus. Could the same fate await a modern superpower? Keep watching as we unravel this intriguing comparison, with the next being the economy. The Ottoman Empire, once a vibrant hub of global commerce, fell into economic stagnation as Europe raced ahead with industrialization. The once scientifically advanced Muslim nation decided to focus less on science around the 15th century. Europe quickly adopted the scientific advancements of the Muslims, which ushered in the Renaissance and then the Enlightenment period. With that, they built factories and modern infrastructure while the Ottomans lagged behind, clinging to their outdated economy. Soon, the empire was forced into financial dependency, borrowing heavily from European creditors just to stay afloat. Foreign loans piled up, and with them, the empire's economic sovereignty slipped away, handed over to the powers that would later carve it up. Fast forward to today, and the US, despite its economic position, faces a similar crossroads. For decades, America was the industrial and economic powerhouse of the world, but now it's facing rising competition, especially from China. The very capitalism that built America was not loyal to its origins, since it always follows money, and as such entire sectors have been deindustrialized in favor of offshore cheap labor, mainly in China. The nation's debt has ballooned to staggering levels, stretching to $36 trillion as of 2024. Reliance on foreign manufacturing, particularly cheap labor from abroad, has weakened the American worker in terms of skills, and with capitalism's loyalty shifting to wherever the profits flow, many fear that America could be losing its economic dominance as more companies leave for more favorable operations elsewhere. While the US still holds a technological advantage, it's a fragile lead. China, just a few steps behind, is closing the gap at an alarming pace. And other nations, which once looked to America as a leader, are now catching up, surpassing it in areas once dominated by the US economy. The parallels are striking. Just like the Ottomans, America's economic dominance is showing cracks, their debt is staggering, and their scientific lead is being overtaken by other world players. As such, history warns us how quickly empires can be undone by financial dependency and growing competition. When an empire grows comfortable and thinks it is too big to fail is the beginning of its demise. So, could we be witnessing the slow erosion of America's economic supremacy, just like the Ottomans before World War I? Keep watching as we dive deeper into this unsettling comparison that may just reveal what lies ahead for the modern empire and how its military could be the reason for its fall. At its peak, the Ottoman Empire stretched across 3 continents, but as the years passed, it began losing ground, literally. Territory after territory slipped through its fingers, with each military defeat weakening the empire's legitimacy from the end of the 17th century onwards. Nationalist uprisings within its borders that came later further eroded its control, and soon, what was once an unshakable empire was crumbling from within. Every lost battle, every ceded land, chipped away at the Ottomans' once mighty reputation. Then Europe's enlightenment coincided with the Ottomans' loss of grip and refusal to progress. Now, look at the United States. It hasn't lost physical territory, as it isn't an empire in the traditional sense, but it's faced a series of strategic setbacks that echo the Ottomans' decline. Countless imperial-like wars, from the quagmire of Vietnam to the drawn-out conflicts in Iraq, Syria, and Afghanistan, the US has struggled to achieve the decisive victories that once defined its military strength. The narrative of military overreach has become harder to ignore. With 800 military bases scattered across the globe, spanning Europe, Asia, Africa, and beyond, some argue that America's global military presence is stretching thinner by the day like many empires did before. This left their countless bases vulnerable. Each intervention, while once seen as a projection of power, now raises questions about whether the US is overextending itself, much like the Ottomans did before their fall, which started with their attempt at Austria when they've already been way overstretched. As America's establishment continues to pursue more power and engage in wars abroad, the parallels with the Ottoman Empire get clearer. Could the US be facing a similar fate, where the military might no longer guarantee dominance, but instead reveal vulnerability? The Ottoman Empire, once a multi-ethnic and multi-religious giant, found itself splintering as nationalist movements surged across its territories in the 19th century. Greeks, Serbs, Bulgarians, and Arabs, fueled by European ideas of nationhood, sought independence from Ottoman rule, tearing apart the empire's once cohesive structure. The Ottomans struggled to forge a unified identity among their diverse populations, and this failure played a pivotal role in their dissolution. Now, look at the United States. While not facing ethnic secession in the same way, internal divides, religious, ethnic, classist, and political, are growing deeper by the day. The rise of nationalist and separatist rhetoric, particularly from far-right factions and movements pushing for states' rights, is creating fractures that eerily resemble the Ottoman struggles with unity. The polarization is widening, and the consequences could be severe, especially knowing that the population is heavily armed. The United States prides itself on being a melting pot, but as tensions rise and the state struggles to maintain justice and security, those very divisions could be exploited. History teaches us that when a state shows weakness, people are quick to capitalize on its deficiencies, and the outcome can be chaotic. Just like the Ottomans, the US faces the risk of internal fragmentation if it fails to address these growing cracks and keeps itself bogged down by foreign wars. Could America be following the same path to internal collapse as the Ottoman Empire? The Ottoman Empire once tried to reverse its decline through sweeping reforms like the Tanzimat, aiming to modernize its military, legal, and administrative systems. But these efforts were largely blocked by resistance from traditional elites, and the slow pace of change never addressed the deeper, systemic issues that plagued the empire. The result? A patchwork of failed reforms that did little to stop the empire's inevitable fall. Now, fast forward to the United States. Faced with its own set of challenges, America struggles to implement meaningful reforms. Political polarization and the influence of special interest groups create a landscape where even the most necessary changes, whether in healthcare, education, or infrastructure, are often stalled. Discussions happen, promises are made, but real action? Rarely. These roadblocks, from Congress to public opposition, leave the nation feeling stuck, unable to address the deeper issues affecting its long-term sustainability. And it doesn't stop there. As the government grapples with internal reform, the fast-tracking of foreign interests only deepens the sense of frustration among everyday Americans. When citizens see the system failing them while serving others, it does more than raise eyebrows, it fuels the fire of discontent. Could America, like the Ottomans, be doomed by its inability to adapt and reform in time? The Ottoman Empire was once a formidable force, but European imperialism and interference played a key role in its decline. Foreign powers, eager to expand their influence, manipulated internal strife and weakened the empire's control over its territories, accelerating its collapse. The Ottomans couldn't fend off the external pressures that chipped away at their sovereignty. Fast forward to the United States, and while it isn't a victim of imperialism in the traditional sense, it faces increasing meddling from foreign states, namely Israel. This has become a topic of great contention. The U.S. government's unwavering support for Israel, even in moments when Americans are suffering, raises eyebrows. Take, for example, natural disasters in North Carolina and Tennessee during hurricane season in 2024, where the government claimed they had no money for relief efforts, only to sign off on $20 billion in aid the same day, split between Israel and Ukraine. While Ukraine's influence is less contentious, Israel's pressure on American policy is a point of intense debate. As foreign states continue to influence America's priorities, could the U.S. be heading down the same path as the Ottomans? How external pressures could be weakening the foundation of the American empire is a question that we all must ask. While JFK wanted to address Israeli influence in American politics, he met his fate faster than he could engage in reforms to foreign policy. In a desperate bid to reclaim its former glory, the Ottoman Empire plunged into World War I. But instead of regaining power, it only accelerated the empire's collapse, leading to its ultimate disintegration. What was supposed to be a shot at revival turned into the final nail in the coffin for one of history's greatest empires. Now, let's look at the United States. While there's no direct comparison to World War I, America's engagement in long, costly wars, like those in Iraq, Afghanistan, and now its proxy war with Russia, using Ukraine, and its proxy war in the Middle East, using Israel, has drained resources, diverted attention, and damaged its international reputation. These conflicts, though on a different scale, are eerily reminiscent of the Ottomans' last-ditch effort to cling to power. Some analysts even suggest that the next major war, one on the scale of the world wars, could be the final blow that ends America's global dominance once and for all. Ironically, it seems like those in power are itching for a major war that could be their undoing. Could America's involvement in future conflicts seal its fate just as it did for the Ottomans? The precarious position the U.S. now finds itself in is indeed worth a thought. Could the next global war be the one that topples this modern superpower? The answer might be clearer than we think. The decline of the Ottoman Empire was marked by internal weaknesses, economic stagnation, military defeats, and a failure to adapt to changing global realities. The U.S., while not yet in a state of clear decline, shows parallels in terms of internal division, economic troubles, competition, military overreach, and resistance to reform. Both met external pressures and a shifting global balance of power that challenged their hegemonic status. Where the comparison diverges is in the technological, economic, and global context. The US, with its technological and financial infrastructure, is far more integrated into the global system than the Ottoman Empire was. However, if the US fails to address its internal and external challenges effectively, its trajectory could, in the long term, resemble that of past empires like the Ottomans, with gradual decline driven by a mix of internal decay and external competition. Thank you for remaining with us until the end. This channel needs your support. If you like this video, then please give it a thumbs up. Also, if you like this content, subscribe to get more of it. Until next time.